Hello guys, good morning. How are you today? I hope you guys are all this day. The first, let me introduce myself. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ulfa Mardianti Mahmud. I'm from Biology Education, University of Muhammadiyah Professor Dr. Hamka. I graduated in 2020. My hobby is playing the game and reading the novels. Okay, I think it's enough for this introducing. Okay, next the lesson materials. The first, Anabolism and Catabolism. The topic of anabolism, the first anabolism definition, the second the function of anabolism, the third example of anabolism process, the fourth is related biology terms, and the last quiz, the topic of anabolism, the definition of anabolism. Anabolism collectively refers to all the process of chemical reaction that build large molecules of smaller molecules of atom. These processes are also known as anabolic process or anabolic pathways. The opposite of anabolism is catabolism, the set of processes that break down large molecules into smaller ones. Anabolism and catabolism are the two types of metabolic pathways. Metabolic pathways are series of chemical reactions that take place in the cell. Anabolic pathways of energy, while catabolic release energy. The second, the function of anabolism. Anabolic pathways in a cell lead to the formation of large, more complex molecules from smaller ones. The first, catabolic pathways are needed to break down nutrient molecules from food into small building blocks. These smaller molecules are then joined together to make different, bigger molecules called macromolecules. Anabolic pathways involve the input of energy which is needed to form chemical bonds between smaller molecules to make macromolecules. Molecules built from anabolism are then used to build structure in cell, or even to help build new cell. Anabolic and catabolism are controlled by certain rhythms, and both are important for the development, growth, and maintenance of an organism cells. The next example of anabolic process. Okay, in this part, example of anabolic process. Protein synthesis. Proteins are macromolecules that carry out cellular activities encoded by an organism genes. They have many different functions in the body, including DNA replication, aiding chemical reaction as enzymes, transporting materials in the cells, cell growth and signaling, and improving physical structure. Each cell in the human body contains about 1 to 3 billion proteins. Example, the second, DNA synthesis. Deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA, is an organism genetic material. It is macromolecule made out of smaller molecules called nucleic acid, which are themselves made up of a nucleotide base attached to a deoxyribose sugar and phosphate molecules. DNA synthesis is an anabolic process that takes place in a cell's nucleus just before cell divides. It involves unzipping the double strands of DNA and attaching new matching nucleotides to each half of the start that has been unzipped, forming two new strands that each contain half of the old strand. Oh yes, the pointed example of anabolism is protein synthesis and DNA synthesis. The fourth related biology terms, catabolism, the set of processes that breaks down large molecules into smaller ones. Metabolic pathways, a series of chemical reactions in the cell. Macromolecule, a very large and complex molecule. Anabolic steroids, hormones used to treat conditions in which an increase in molecule and muscle mass is needed. They are also sometimes abused by athletes. The quiz in the last. Okay, next, the topic of catabolism. The first catabolism definition. The definition of catabolism. Catabolism is the part of metabolism reversible for breaking complex molecules down into smaller molecules. The other part of the metabolism, anabolism, will simple molecules into complex ones. During the catabolism, energy is released from the bonds of the large molecules being breakdown. Typically, that energy is then stored in the bonds of adenosine triphosphate as ATP or ATP. The catabolism increases the concentration of ATP in becomes in the cells as the breakdown nutrients and food. The ATP in such high concentration becomes much more likely to give up its energy in the release of phosphate. The anabolism then use this energy to combine simple precursors into complex molecules that add to the cell and store energy for cell division. Many pathways in the catabolism have similar version in the anabolism. For example, large fat molecules in an organism food must be broken down into the small fatty acid that it is compressed of. Then, for the organism to store energy for winter, large fat molecules must be created in stored. Catabolic reaction breaks the fat down and anabolic pathways rebuild them. These metabolic pathways often use the same enzymes to decrease the change that the pathways will undo each other's progress. The pathways often inhibit each other and are separate into different organelles in eukaryotes. The second example of catabolism process. I'm sorry, I'm typo in point second. Is it example of catabolism process, not anabolism? Okay, I'm so sorry. Example of catabolism: carbohydrate and lipid catabolism. Almost all organisms use the sugar, glucose as a source of energy, and carbon change. Glucose is stored by organism in large molecules called polysaccharides. These polysaccharides can be starch, glycogen, or other simple sugars like sucrose. When an animal cell needs energy, it sends signals to the parts of the body that store glucose or it consumes food. Glucose is released from the catabolism by special enzymes in the first part of the catabolism. The glucose is then distributed into the body for other cells to use as energy. The catabolic pathways, glycolysis, then breaks glucose down even further, releasing energy that is stored in ATP from glucose. Pyruvate molecules are made. Further catabolic pathways create acetate, which is K metabolic in intermediate molecule. Acetate can become a wide variety molecules from phospholipids to pigment molecules to hormones. Next, the example of catabolism process, protein catabolism. All protein in the known world are formats of the same 20 amino acid. That means that the protein in plants, animals, and bacteria are just different combination of the 20 amino. And then when an organism consumes a smaller organism, all of the protein in that organism must be digested in the catabolism. Enzymes known as proteins break the bonds between the amino acid in each protein until the acids are completely separated. Once separated, the amino acids can be distributed to the cells of the body according to the organism DNA. The amino acid will be recombined into new proteins. If no source of glucose is present or there are too many amino acids, the molecules will enter future catabolic pathways to be broken down into carbon skeletons. These small molecules can be combined in gluconeogenesis to create new glucose, which the cell can use as energy or store in the large molecules. During starvation, cellular protein can go through the catabolism to allow an organism to survive on its own tissues until more food is found. In this way, organism can live with only small amounts of water for extremely long times. This makes them much more resilient to changing environmental conditions. The point number three relates to biology terms. Anabolism, the part of the plant metabolism that builds large molecules from smaller ones. Metabolism, the anabolism and catabolism combined, or all of the enzymes driven reaction in cell, metabolic pathway, consecutive chemical reaction organised within cell. Catabolic pathways, a single series of reaction that breaks down a specific molecules. Next, it's time for I want to give you some quiz anabolism and then quiz catabolism. The first is quiz anabolism. You can answer this question for 5 minutes. To question 10 minutes. The first question, which is not an example of an anabolic process? The second question, carnivores can produce all the glucose they need from animals. Protein herbivores obtain all the glucose they need from plants. Why can obligate carnivores eat plants or obligate herbivores eat meat to get their energy? Okay, I can wait. Okay, for all my students, I think time is up. The answer to question number 1. The answer is B. B is correct. Why? Because anabolic process involves making large molecules from smaller ones. Choice A, C, and D are all anabolic process. Choice B is a catabolic process. It describes large molecules being broken down into smaller ones. Quiz number 2. The answer is B. B is correct. Why? Because obligate conifers can only meet because they lack the required catabolic pathways that break down plants. Evolution, by selecting against unused and inefficient pathways, select for organisms that fill certain niche. If that niche offers very little plant material, the catabolism changes and certain pathways are lost. This even if you taught a carnivore how to eat and gather plants, their body could not process the nutrients. In the same way, an herbivore can only get nutrients from plant materials. Omnivores have evolved in a niche that requires energy from both sources to be utilized in the animals. The catabolism is capable of digesting both kinds of food. Okay, thank you for your attention. I'm so sorry I give this video for you all my students because in this pandemic, we are studying at home, and then thank you for your attention. And then I'm sorry I have many faults. I'm sorry if my English language so bad. I'm so sorry. Okay, I give you this video because we are studying at home. It means we are daring. If you correct this question, I give you 5 point for one question. It means 2 question, 10 points. Okay. Thank you for your attention for all my students. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much.